I didn't switch the dinner plates because I was hungry. I did it because the look in my daughter-in-law's eyes wasn't love. It was a countdown. Seconds later, the woman sitting next to me collapsed, her body seizing up as the room went dead silent. That silence? It was the loudest confession I'd ever heard. There are moments in life where a single small gesture can shift the course of your entire existence. For me, that moment came when my daughter-in-law, Jessica, placed my plate in front of me that night. Before she smiled, she just watched me. It was a silent, expectant stare, with a calmness so strange it made my skin crawl. It was my 66th birthday, and what was supposed to be a warm family dinner ended up becoming a scene I will never be able to scrub from my memory. Her look wasn't one of affection or respect. It was waiting for something, and in that instant, something deep inside my gut twisted. Internal monologue. You know, they say paranoia is just a heightened state of awareness. I've never been a suspicious woman, but I've lived long enough to know what a lie looks like, especially when it's dressed up as family obligation. I've lived long enough to recognize when hatred disguises itself as hypocrisy. So as casually as I could, I switched my plate with her mother's, who was sitting right next to me. I did it without thinking, moved by an intuition that, over the years, has become stronger than logic. Minutes later, while everyone was laughing and toasting, Jessica's mother started breaking out in a cold sweat. Her face turned ghost white, her hands started shaking violently, and before anyone could process what was happening, she slumped off her chair. The sound of crystal shattering against the floor made my heart stop cold. Everyone jumped up, screaming. And then, amidst the chaos, I heard the voice of my grandson, Leo, asking innocently, "Mommy, did the plan work?" For a split second, the world froze. No one seemed to hear the child except me. And although my body was trembling, I managed to stay on my feet. Jessica ran toward her mother, feigning desperation, while my son David called 911, his voice cracking with panic. I didn't say a word. I just watched, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this had been no accident. But before I go on, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps me see that you support me and enjoy these stories. And tell me down below in the comments, what city are you watching from? Now let's continue. The sirens didn't take long to fill the street. As the paramedics took Jessica's mother away, my son tried to console his wife. She was weeping inconsolably, clinging to him like an actress rehearsing a well-learned role. I watched her in silence, replaying every single time she had asked me not to go into the kitchen, or not to touch her things. Jessica had always had a kind smile. Too kind. When the ambulance left, the silence in the house became unbearable. My grandson was still staring at the table, confused. I went over to him and hugged him. His little body was shaking. I whispered in his ear, "Everything is okay, sweetie. Don't say anything." He looked at me with those innocent eyes that see everything and said, almost in a sigh, "Mommy said you weren't going to suffer anymore." I froze. Not suffer anymore? Since when did my daughter-in-law believe I was suffering? And why would her son repeat those words with such natural ease? That night, nobody slept. Jessica wouldn't stop calling the hospital. She said her mother was stable, that maybe it was a terrible allergic reaction, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. David tried to calm her down, completely failing to notice that his wife could barely look at him. And I, sitting in the armchair in the living room, mentally replayed every gesture of the dinner. Her insistence on serving me personally, the nervous glint in her eyes, and that tiny detail that now made perfect sense. She had cooked only for me. I remembered how days earlier, she had asked me to rest, telling me not to worry about a thing, that this year she would handle everything. "You just enjoy yourself, Audrey," she had said with a smile. And I, naive as I was, accepted. I never imagined that rest was her way of getting rid of me permanently. Around midnight, the phone rang. Jessica answered, her voice still broken by fake sobbing. "Yes, County General?" Her face changed. The color rushed back into her skin, and for a second, I thought I saw relief in her eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Oh, yes, Yes, I understand. Thank you. She hung up slowly. David looked at her, anguished. What happened? How is your mom? Jessica lowered her head, feigning sorrow. No, she didn't make it. My son buried his face in his hands. She hugged him, hiding a smirk that lasted barely a blink of an eye. But I saw it, and I knew that, for her, this outcome wasn't a tragedy. It was a calculation error. That early morning, when everyone had finally gone to bed, I stayed alone in the dining room, staring at the plates still on the table. Mine was clean. Jessica's mother's plate was covered by a napkin. I approached slowly and pulled back the cloth. The smell emanating from it was sweet, chemical, and very real. A smell that didn't belong to food. It belonged to fear. My husband, Arthur, had been a chemist at a major pharmaceutical company in his life. He had worked with dozens of dangerous substances. Internal monologue. Arthur taught me a lot of things, but the one lesson that stuck was this. The most lethal poisons are the ones that don't leave an immediate footprint. They masquerade as nature until it's too late. I learned from him that the most lethal toxins are the silent ones. I touched the edge of the plate and realized I had been seconds away from dying. Jessica had planned this carefully, perhaps for months, and if not for that intuition, that shiver that made me switch the plates, I would be the one on the way to the morgue. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Too normal. Jessica was dressed in black, her face serene, taking condolence calls. My son, devastated, barely ate. And Leo, the boy, wouldn't speak. He just looked at me with a mix of guilt and fear. I decided to keep quiet. I had no proof, only suspicions. And in a house where love is disguised as habit, suspicions are more dangerous than the truth. But deep inside, I swore I would uncover everything. Not for me, but for that child who still believed that bad deeds could have good reasons. That afternoon, when Jessica went out to handle funeral arrangements, I went into the kitchen. Everything was impeccably clean. Too clean. No leftover food, no dirty pots, no smell. Just the hum of the refrigerator, but in the trash can, I found a small, empty bottle. No label, with a faint metallic scent. I picked it up with my fingertips and hid it in my apron. I looked at the clock. It was 5:44 p.m., and although I didn't know it yet, that was the exact moment I stopped being the victim and started being the hunter. The war, silent and cold, had just begun. I've never really believed in premonitions, but since that night, my body seemed to warn me before my mind did. It was as if the air in the house had changed, denser, heavier, as if a shadow was hiding in every corner watching me. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that the trauma of the accident had made me paranoid. But lies have a smell, and this house stank of toxicity. The hours following the funeral were a parade of hypocritical faces. Neighbors who never spoke to me came with flowers and hollow phrases. Jessica, dressed in rigorous black, behaved like an exemplary grieving daughter, when the only death that actually touched her was the death of her good wife disguise. I watched her in silence. Every word she spoke was a performance, every tear a calculation. That same night, while she slept, I got up to check the kitchen again. I had to understand what had happened. And there, amidst the impeccable order she loved so much, I noticed something odd. A spice jar, supposedly oregano, was out of place. When I opened it, a bitter chemical smell mixed with the air. It wasn't oregano, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that this woman had tried to kill me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I only felt an icy calm run through my body, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. I clutched the jar to my chest and knew that someday, at some point, she would regret not finishing the job when she had the chance. Over the next few days, Jessica started acting differently, more attentive, sweeter, almost subservient. Every morning, she prepared my breakfast with a smile that pretended to be sincere. "Rest, Audrey," she would say. "You've done enough." I nodded, knowing that every word hid venom. Literally. David, my son, noticed nothing. He lived buried in his office, working overtime, as if pain was something he could dodge by staying busy. He was never a suspicious man. Since he was a boy, he believed everyone told the truth. And now his greatest weakness was blindly trusting the wrong woman. One morning, coming down for breakfast, I found something curious. The milk had a metallic taste. I looked up. Jessica was watching me from the sink with a half smile. I said nothing. I just took the glass, set it on the table, and feigned a slight dizzy spell. She ran toward me, exaggerating her concern. "Oh, Audrey, are you okay?" "Yes, dear," I replied calmly. "Just a little dizzy spell." And then I saw her face harden, just for a second. She was expecting me to drop. That day, I decided to go through the kitchen drawers while she was out shopping. I wasn't looking for anything specific, but things speak when you learn how to listen to them, and Jessica's objects spoke of a double life: the perfect housewife on the outside and the silent strategist on the inside. I found a small notebook with handwritten recipes. Most were desserts, but one page was different. A list of crossed-out ingredients, and at the bottom, a name: calcium cyanamide. I recognized the term from my husband. It was a toxic substance used in industrial settings, sometimes as a pesticide. Colorless. Hard to detect. I closed the notebook with shaking hands. If I confronted her, she would deny it. If I told my son, he would call me crazy. So I kept my silence as a weapon, and I started to watch. One afternoon, Leo sat next to me in the garden. He had a sketchbook and a serious expression, improper for a 10-year-old. "Grandma," he said quietly, "why does Mommy look at you like that?" "Like what?" "Like when I break something and don't want Daddy to know." My heart squeezed. I stroked his hair. "Don't worry, my love. Sometimes adults get angry for no reason." He lowered his head and kept drawing. When he finished, he showed me his picture: the dining room table, with 4 people sitting and one figure fallen on the floor. On the table, plates of different colors, and in the corner, a word written in big letters: plan. I didn't know what to say. I hugged him tight and promised him nothing bad would happen to us. But inside, I felt a chill as deep as if fate itself had whispered in my ear. That night, Jessica came back late from the hospital. Her mother hadn't survived, but she was still handling paperwork. I pretended to be asleep in the armchair when she entered. I heard her sigh, drop her keys on the table, and call someone on the phone. "No," she said in a low voice. "Not yet." "Yes, I know it failed, but it's not that easy." "No. He doesn't suspect anything." Silence. A sigh. "It's fine. I'll do another dinner. No one will repeat the mistake." I felt my blood turn to ice. Another dinner. Another attempt. Her own mother dying was just an obstacle that fate had removed for her. Now the path to me was clear. I stayed still until I heard her go up the stairs. When the silence returned to the house, I got up and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. I saw my wrinkles, my tired face, but I also saw something new. A gaze that wasn't trembling anymore. The look of a woman who knew that love could be poison, and that poison could turn into justice. For the next few days, I acted. I thanked her for her kindness. I smiled when she offered me food. I feigned a tenderness that was unbearable to me. Every word I spoke was a trap, every gesture a calculated lie. And while she grew confident, I prepared my own game. I visited my old neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, a retired pharmacist, and asked her for a favor: to analyze a small residue of liquid I had collected from the edge of the plate that night. She accepted without asking questions. 3 days later, she called me. Her voice sounded tense. "Audrey, that wasn't wine or oil," she said. "It was a toxic mixture, very dangerous." "What kind?" I asked. "One that can cause respiratory arrest in minutes?" I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in silence, looking at the hands holding the phone. Those same hands my daughter-in-law had kissed while feigning affection. They were shaking, but not from fear. It was contained fury. That night, when Jessica came into my room to wish me good night, I looked her straight in the eye. She was smiling. She always smiled, but for the first time, her smile didn't fool me. Behind it, I saw the reflection of fear. Maybe she sensed something had changed. Maybe she sensed the role of victim didn't belong to me anymore. Because in that moment, under that dim light, I knew something that gave me my breath back. I wasn't going to die at anyone's hands, and if fate wanted to play with me, this time I would be the one shuffling the cards. The next dinner wouldn't be hers. It would be mine. They say silence can be a woman's most powerful weapon. I never understood that. Until then, in that house, every word was a snare, and every gesture could give me away. So I learned to be quiet, to listen, to pretend. And while everyone slept, I wove the plan in my mind that would end this charade. Jessica had gone back to being her old self. Kind, helpful, charming. The type of woman everyone praises for her elegance and patience. But her eyes betrayed her. There was no longer indifference in them, but caution. She knew I suspected, and I knew she knew. It was a silent dance between two women who couldn't stand each other and couldn't stop watching each other. One morning, while serving breakfast, I noticed something strange in her way of speaking. Too sweet, too rehearsed. "I dreamt about your husband last night, Audrey," she said, stirring her coffee. "I dreamt I told him you were tired, that it was time to rest." "How curious," I replied without looking up. "I dreamt of him too, but in my dream, he told me to watch out for snakes that smile." She froze just for a second, but it was enough to know she understood. She lifted her cup and drank in silence. Neither of us spoke of dreams again. The atmosphere in the house became thick, almost unbreathable. My son David tried to maintain normalcy, oblivious to the Cold War being fought under his own roof. I watched him with tenderness and pain. He wasn't guilty, but he was blind, and his blindness made him an accomplice. Leo, on the other hand, saw too much. He was a child, but his gaze carried a weight no little boy should bear. One afternoon, while drawing on the floor, he whispered to me, "Grandma, Mommy talks to herself in the kitchen." "What does she say, sweetie?" "I don't know. She says something will go right this time and that you won't get in the way again." I felt a chill. I knelt in front of him. "Listen to me, Leo. I want you to promise me something." "What?" "If you hear your mom say weird things, don't repeat them. Not to your dad, not to her. Only to me. Okay?" He nodded, scared. I hugged him tight. He was so small, and yet fate had put him in the middle of a war he didn't understand. That night, while everyone slept, I entered Jessica's room. I knew I shouldn't, but instinct is stronger than prudence. I opened her vanity and searched the drawers. Perfumes, jewelry, photos, and under a box of cosmetics I found a prescription. The name of the medication looked familiar. Diazepam. In high doses, it could cause fainting, or even death if mixed with alcohol. On the back of the slip, there was a note written in rushed handwriting. Double the dose. Make sure she doesn't notice the taste. I stood motionless. The handwriting belonged to a man. Whose? The same man she had spoken to on the phone that night? Or the doctor who prescribed whatever she asked for without questions? I photographed the note with my cell phone. I put it back silently and left the room without a trace. I knew every step I took had to look innocent, every movement calculated, because if Jessica suspected I was watching her, I would be the next to fall. The days became a routine of appearances. Breakfasts where smiles were weapons, trivial conversations loaded with invisible poison, and in the middle of it all, David, my son, more absent every day, more tired, more blind. One day, while bringing in laundry from the line, I saw something move among the flowers in the garden. It was Jessica, talking on the phone in a low voice. I hid behind the rose bush. Her words were like knives. "Yes, I know it failed, but I have the money almost ready. No, he doesn't suspect. He's destroyed about Mom. Yes, the old lady is still alive, but not for long." My heart hammered against my chest. I heard her laugh softly, with a coldness that froze my blood. Then a noise gave me away. A flower pot fell at my feet. Jessica spun around instantly. Our eyes met. Her expression was brief, but I understood it. She knew I had heard her. That night I struggled to sleep. Every creak of the house made me think I was in danger. But more than fear, I felt rage. Rage at having allowed a stranger to take control of my home, my family, my peace. And I knew surviving wasn't enough. I had to make her fall. I started leaving little traps, changes in the cupboards, marks on bottles, tiny invisible tests to measure her reaction. If she touched something, I'd know she had tried to poison me again. And I wasn't wrong. 2 days later, the jar of honey in the pantry had a different lid. Jessica never used honey, only me. I watched her prepare breakfast slyly, humming, with that smile that irritated me so much. When she placed the honey on the table, she pushed it gently toward me. "For your tea, Audrey. I know you like it." I looked her in the eyes. How thoughtful, dear. I opened the jar, smelled the contents, and smiled. "But I don't have a craving today." She forced a laugh. "What a shame. I got it just for you." "Then it'll be for you, dear." I served a spoonful. She went pale. No, thank you. I'm on a diet." Her response was everything I needed to hear. I put the jar away and feigned normalcy. I knew that honey was her new trap, but I also knew that by keeping it, I had the proof I needed. The following days were a silent war. Jessica avoided me. Her smile became tense, and every time our eyes crossed, there was a flash of fear in hers. I, on the other hand, started feeling stronger. I was no longer the fragile old lady who needed protection. I was a woman who had seen death up close and decided to stare it down. I started writing everything down in a notebook. Dates, conversations, gestures, smells, changes. Every page was a piece of the puzzle that, sooner or later, would show the truth. And as I wrote, I promised myself something. There would be no next dinner without witnesses, because if Jessica wanted to play with poison, I would teach her that there are poisons you don't drink. You plan them. Internal monologue. There are truths you don't go looking for, but they end up knocking on your door anyway, and when they do, there's no going back. That was what I felt that night when I discovered what was hidden behind the house phone. The old landline, with its metallic ring, had been there since my husband was alive. We kept it more out of habit than necessity, but what I didn't know was that the phone had a feature we never used: automatic call recording. It was Leo who told me accidentally. We were playing cards one afternoon when he mentioned, with that innocence that sometimes breaks your soul, "Grandma, Mommy says she's going to delete the voices from the phone before you hear them." I dropped the cards. "What did you say, sweetie?" "That. She said the phone keeps everything we talk about and you shouldn't hear sad things." His mother, deleting recordings. I felt a knot in my stomach. That woman didn't just lie. She controlled every corner of my house. When everyone fell asleep, I went down to the living room. The hallway light filtered in like a thin line on the floor. I approached the phone and found a small button on the side I had never noticed. It said playback. I pressed it carefully. At first, I only heard static. Then, a familiar voice, mine, leaving a message for my son a week before the birthday. "David, tell Jessica not to worry. I can cook myself." My voice sounded warm, naive, still trusting. I skipped forward. Another recording. Jessica talking to someone. My heart pounded in my chest. "Yes, I have everything ready." "Are you sure about the dose?" A male voice responded. "Enough. She won't notice a thing." "What if David suspects?" "He won't. He thinks his mother is eternal." I covered my mouth with my hand. My breath cut short. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I kept listening. The man's voice insisted. "I don't like this, Jessica. This wasn't part of the deal." "Then forget the money. I'll finish the job." The phone shook in my hands. She had said the money. What deal were they talking about? Was it a lover? An accomplice? A partner? I didn't know. I only understood that the attempt to poison me hadn't been an impulse, but something carefully planned. That early morning, I didn't sleep. I rewound the recordings over and over, listening to the same fragments until I memorized them. Jessica's voice sounded different in every call, cold, calculating, as if words weren't emotions, but instructions. At 3 a.m, I heard the last recording, the voice of my son, my own David. "Jessica, don't exaggerate. She's my mother." Your mother doesn't trust me. It's normal. Just give her time. Time is what we don't have, David. I can't live with that shadow over me. That shadow, he replied, is who helped us when no one else did. Silence. And then the phrase that broke my soul. If you really love me, you'll let things take their course. I turned off the device. I sat there trembling. My son knew. Maybe not everything, but he knew enough to understand his wife hated me, and even so, he did nothing. The next morning, I watched him during breakfast. He looked exhausted, distracted. He had deep circles under his eyes and red eyes. Jessica, in contrast, radiated tranquility. Sleep well, Audrey? She asked, pouring coffee. Perfectly, I replied. Dreams brought me answers. She raised an eyebrow. Answers? Yes. Sometimes the past speaks, if you know how to listen. Her smile tensed, barely perceptible. I took a sip of coffee without looking away. I wasn't afraid. She was, and that gave me strength. That day, I visited my neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, again. I asked her to listen to the recordings and help me identify the name of the chemical mentioned in the conversation. She took notes, analyzed, thought for a few seconds. It can't be, she said. What? What she used isn't a common poison. It's a modified medical compound. Only someone with access to prescriptions could get it. I knew instantly what that meant. The accomplice was a doctor, and not just any doctor, but the family doctor. Dr. Evans, my son's friend since college, was the one signing Jessica's prescriptions for anxiety. A man I always greeted with respect, never imagining his ink on a paper could kill. That afternoon, I decided to confront him. I went to his office unannounced. The receptionist let me through. When he saw me, his face went pale. Mrs. Dominguez, what a surprise. I didn't come to surprise you, doctor. I came to ask you something. I told him I had found a prescription with his signature. I didn't accuse him. I just watched him. His breathing changed. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do, I replied calmly. The prescription for the sedative compound, under a different name. The color drained from his face. He tried to smile. There must be a mistake. The only mistake was thinking I wouldn't find out. I walked out without saying more. I didn't need confessions. His reaction had betrayed him. I knew Jessica had him entangled, whether for money or something darker. That night, as I got ready for bed, I heard a noise in the hallway. Footsteps, slow, calculated. I grabbed my robe and opened the door. No one. Just the phone. Again, with its light blinking, a new recording. I played it. Silence. Then breathing. And finally, a low voice, barely a whisper. Did you think you could play with me, old woman? I dropped the handset. The sound cut off. I ran to the window. No one outside. My heart was beating so hard my chest hurt. The voice was Jessica's, without a doubt. She knew I had discovered her, and I understood that my silence no longer protected me. She didn't just suspect. She was planning her next move. That night, I didn't close my eyes. I stayed awake, watching the reflection of the garden under the moon. I thought of my son, of my grandson, of the life I had built with so much effort. And I knew that love, when mixed with fear, can turn into a battlefield. The war was no longer silent. It was inevitable. And if Jessica wanted to put a plate in front of me again, this time I would be the one choosing the ingredients. Never underestimate an older woman. We spend our lives observing, listening, pretending we don't understand, until the moment comes to move the first piece. That morning, waking up, I didn't feel fear anymore. I had moved from fearing for my life to planning how to take it back. The recording with Jessica's voice was still in my purse, along with the falsified medical prescription. 2 small pieces, but enough to bring down her castle of lies. Jessica came down to breakfast with her hair perfectly pulled back, pretending everything was normal. Sleep well, Audrey? She asked with that smile that now made me nauseous. Better than ever, dear, I replied. I dreamed that justice exists. She frowned, not understanding, but I didn't say more. I just poured myself coffee. I made it myself. I would never let her hands touch my food again. That afternoon, I began my plan. I wasn't going to report her yet. The police need proof, and proof alone isn't enough if the culprit knows how to act. I needed to see her fall by her own hands. I went to visit my grandson at school. I waited for him at the exit. I hugged him tight and asked him to walk with me a bit. "Is everything okay, Grandma?" he asked. "Yes, my love, but I want you to help me with something very important." "With what?" "I want you to keep a secret, just between you and me." I gave him a small digital recorder. I explained how to turn it on and off. "When you hear your mom talking on the phone or saying weird things, just turn it on, understand?" He looked at me with those big, scared eyes. "Is Mommy in trouble?" "No, son, but sometimes good people forget who they are, and we need to help them remember." He hugged me, and for the first time I felt I wasn't alone. Days passed. Jessica seemed more restless than ever. She received secret calls, went out without notice, and every time she returned, her face was tenser. I feigned calm, but inside I counted the minutes. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I found something under the sofa. An envelope. It had Jessica's name on it, and inside, a copy of a life insurance policy. In my name. And the beneficiary, of course, was her. My heart skipped a beat. Everything fit. The money, the urgency, the attempts. My death would be her inheritance. I kept the envelope. I wasn't going to confront it yet. The game was just beginning. That night, I made dinner myself. David, tired from work, sat down without suspecting a thing. Jessica feigned tenderness, pouring him wine and speaking sweetly. I watched them in silence. When I raised my glass, I noticed something that froze my blood. Jessica didn't drink. Her hand trembled for just a moment. That was enough. She didn't taste the wine. She just looked at me, waiting. And I, calmly, took her glass and drank from hers. Her expression changed. Pale, tense, lips parted. "What's wrong, dear?" I asked with a serene voice. "Aren't you toasting with me?" No, I have a headache," she stammered. "Then go rest. I'll handle everything." She got up fast, almost running. I watched her disappear down the hallway, and in that moment, I knew the trap was set. Before we go on, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far, and what you would do in my place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. Now, let's continue. That same night, Leo came into my room with the recorder hidden in his hands. "Grandma," he whispered, "I left it on like you said." I took it and hugged him tight. "Thank you, my love. Now go to sleep, okay?" I waited until everyone slept and turned on the recorder. Jessica's voice filled the room. "Yes, I put in more than you said. It won't fail this time." "And the boy?" a man asked. "He knows nothing. He just repeats what I say." "And the old lady?" "She'll sign the insurance tomorrow. Everything will go perfectly." My heart raced. The proof was there. The plan was still active, and my son was still sleeping next to a murderer. I decided to act before she did. The next day, I prepared everything as if nothing was happening. Lunch, clean house, fresh flowers in the vase. But in secret, I called the family lawyer, the same one who had handled my husband's affairs. I asked him to come that afternoon with a new document, the revocation of any insurance or inheritance in Jessica's name. When he arrived, Jessica was present. "What's happening, Audrey?" she asked with fake sweetness. "Nothing, dear. Just want to get things in order in case something happens to me." She tensed up. "Why do you say that?" "A woman my age has to be cautious, don't you think?" I watched her clench her teeth while the lawyer explained every line to me. I signed slowly, enjoying every stroke of the pen. She understood. Everything she was planning no longer had value. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway again. Not Leo. Not my son. Her. The door opened softly. I saw her silhouette in the dim light. She had something in her hand. A glass. I pretended to be asleep. I felt the liquid being poured onto my nightstand water carafe. The aroma, unmistakable, sweet and chemical. Jessica left without a sound. I waited 2 minutes. I got up calmly and poured the contents of the carafe into her wine glass that she had left sitting out since dinner. I left it there and smiled, not out of malice, but out of justice. The poison she had prepared for me now had her name written on it. I didn't sleep. I stayed in the dark, listening to the ticking clock and the echo of my thoughts. I knew that at sunrise, something was going to change. I didn't know how, but I felt the cycle was about to close. And when the first ray of sun came through the window, I heard a scream. "Jessica!" It was my son's voice. "Jessica, wake up!" I ran to their room. She was lying on the floor, face pale, breath shallow. On the table, the glass I had left, justice silent, had done its work. But in that instant, while my son cried by her side, I didn't feel relief, only a deep exhaustion. The war was over, yes, but the price was too high, and I didn't know yet that the worst was still to come. They say when a person dies, the silence they leave isn't empty, it's an echo that rumbles in every corner, in every memory, in every word never said. That house, once full of voices, dawned mute. Only my son's sobs and the hurried steps of the paramedics entering and leaving like shadows could be heard. I was standing, leaning against the hallway wall, watching them take Jessica away. Her motionless body, covered with a white sheet, seemed lighter than the guilt starting to sink my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. I breathed because it was the only thing left for me to do. My son, David, fell to his knees. "No!" he screamed. "No, please!" I tried to get close, but when I did, he pushed me away with his hand. "Don't touch her! Don't come near!" He yelled at me with red eyes. That look, that mix of rage and pain, split my soul in two. Over the next few hours, everything was confusion. The police arrived, asked questions, checked the room, took samples. I answered calmly to every word, knowing any gesture could be interpreted 1,000 ways. The official version was accidental intoxication. The preliminary report said the cause was a chemical substance mixed with alcohol. No one suspected me. Not yet. But my son didn't look at me the same way. His silence was a wall. That night, the house filled with whispers. Neighbors, family, curious onlookers, all murmuring phrases like, "What a tragedy," or "so young," "such a good woman," if they only knew the truth. But the truth is sometimes a luxury only the soul can pay for. A few days later, the funeral was held in the same church where years ago I had buried my husband. The same smell of flowers, the same mechanical prayers, the same faces feigning compassion. But what hurt me most was seeing Leo, my grandson, in his black suit and empty eyes. The boy who had been my confidant could now barely look at me. I approached him and took his hand. "My love." But he pulled it away gently. "Mommy said if you won, we would all lose." His voice was a whisper, but it went through me like a dagger. I wanted to hug him, explain that I didn't want to win. I just wanted to survive. But how do you explain something like that to a child? Weeks passed. David avoided talking to me. He left early, came back late. I stayed alone, with the echoes of what happened. I slept little. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's face before she fell. That expression of surprise, of fear, the irony of dying by her own poison. And every night I asked myself the same question. Did I do the right thing? Justice doesn't always come with clean hands. Sometimes the truth weighs more than the crime, and I felt it on my skin, like a shadow that wouldn't leave me in peace. One afternoon, while organizing Jessica's drawers, because my son didn't want to touch her things, I found something unexpected. A letter, dated a week before my birthday, addressed to someone named Bob. I opened it with trembling hands. "I can't take this lie anymore," he suspects. He says the old lady manipulates him, that it's not fair the house is still in her name, but I don't dare do anything without you. If something goes wrong, promise me you'll take care of Leo. I love you, J. Bob. That had to be the man she spoke to in the recordings, the accomplice. And if the letter was real, he didn't just know about the plan, he knew every step. Suddenly it all made sense. The calls, the silences, the messages. Jessica wasn't acting alone. And although she was dead, her shadow was still alive. The following week, I received a letter with no return address. Inside, a single sheet, written in male handwriting. You think you won, but you don't know what you started. She wasn't the only one with a plan. The paper shook in my hands. I felt my heart stop. I looked around, paranoid, as if the walls were listening. Bob. It had to be him. The accomplice. The real hidden enemy. I kept the letter in the desk drawer. And that night, for the first time, I locked all the doors. The days became tenser. My son remained distant, increasingly absent, and I started noticing small changes, objects out of place, calls that cut off when I answered, footsteps in the hallway at night. I knew that sensation. Someone was watching me. I tried to tell David, but his answer was sharp. Mom, stop. Don't start again. Again. Jessica wasn't perfect, but she didn't deserve this. Do you think I don't know what she tried to do to me? Enough, he shouted, hitting the table. She's dead, Mom. Dead. And you keep talking about her like she owes you something. I stayed silent. For the first time, I understood I had lost him. My son hadn't just buried his wife. He had also buried the trust he had in me. That night, Leo came to my room with a flashlight. His eyes were full of tears. Grandma, I'm scared. Why, sweetie? There's a man outside. I saw him from my window. I got up immediately. We looked out together. And yes, among the trees in the garden, a silhouette moved slowly, like a reflection. Fear returned to me like an old acquaintance. I asked Leo not to move and went down with my heart pounding. I threw the door open. Nothing, just the wind. But on the ground, next to the gate, was a small black box. I picked it up. Inside, a recorder. I turned it on. This isn't over, Mrs. Dominguez. You removed a piece, but I will move the others. My breath cut short. The echo of the male voice filled the night, and I knew Bob wasn't far, that what began with a dinner was just starting. That early morning, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the recorder in my hands. The price of truth, I thought. It isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a new war. And if that war was against me, then the enemy still didn't know what a wounded grandmother is capable of. Fear has a smell. It's not just sweat or angst. It's a metallic aroma, almost sweet, that seeps into your skin when you know something or someone is watching you. Since that night, that smell filled my house. I didn't see him, but I felt him. Bob was there, somewhere, watching, waiting. A week had passed since I found the recorder at the door, and the days drifted between a fake calm and a gut feeling that wouldn't let me breathe. Sometimes I heard noises in the garden. Other times I thought I saw a shadow reflected in the windows. My son insisted it was paranoia. But Leo felt it too. Grandma, the man in the garden came back, he whispered one afternoon. Did you see him? Yes, but this time he looked at me. I hugged him tight. His little body was trembling, and that was when I decided. I wouldn't wait again. If Bob wanted to play with me, I would find him myself. I started at the beginning, the letter I found among Jessica's things. Bob. Just a name, no last name. But there was something else. The envelope had the letterhead of an old lab company, Apex Pharmaceuticals. I remembered that name. My husband, Arthur, had worked there decades ago, before retiring. And if memory served me right, one of his closest colleagues was also named Bob. My mind clicked. Robert Bob Sterling. Yes, that was the name. A man who used to come to the house in the 80s. I remember his forced laugh, his insistent stare. Arthur always said he was ambitious, but brilliant. After a scandal at the company involving the loss of certain chemical products, he was fired. We never heard from him again. Until now. I went to the municipal archives and asked for access to old documents from Apex. I didn't have much, just my widow's name and my patient's. After a couple of hours, the archivist found something, a report on the disappearance of an experimental sample signed by two names, Arthur Dominguez and Robert Sterling. Both were investigated, but the case was closed for lack of evidence. The rumor said the compound had been sold on the black market, a modified poison for controlled use. My blood ran cold. It was the same type of substance Jessica had used. Was it possible that Bob had kept that secret all these years, and now, with my husband dead, had returned to collect an old debt? That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the garden illuminated by the moon. The wind moved the leaves as if someone was walking through them. And then I saw him, for the first time, clearly. A man, standing by the gate, tall, thin, with gray hair and a dark coat. He didn't move. He just watched me. I felt an uncontrollable impulse. I grabbed a flashlight, went down the stairs, and went out. The cold hit my face, but I kept walking until I was in front of him. I said nothing. He didn't either. He just lifted his head and smiled. "We finally meet," he said with a serene voice. "Are you Bob?" I asked, keeping the light on his face. "I suppose so. Depends on who's calling. What do you want from me?" "What is owed to me?" His answer was like a knife. "Who owes you?" "My husband? Jessica? Both, and now you too. My husband died years ago, and your partner days ago, but secrets don't die with people, Mrs. Dominguez." I watched him in silence. His look wasn't that of a killer, but of someone who enjoyed having control. A man used to waiting. "What do you know?" I asked. "I know Arthur betrayed me. He sold my formula as his own. He stole everything from me, and then he disappeared." "That's a lie," I replied, although a part of me wasn't so sure. "Are you sure?" he replied, smiling. "Ask yourself where the investments that paid for this house came from." I took a step back, not because I believed his words, but because something inside me started to doubt. I went back into the house trembling. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. I sat at Arthur's old desk, the one I hadn't touched since his death. I checked every drawer, and there, hidden under a false bottom, I found a yellowed envelope. Inside, a contract, signed by Arthur and Robert Sterling. The date, 1985. In the margin, by hand, a note written by my husband. I had no choice. If she knew what I did, she wouldn't forgive me. I felt a hollow in my stomach. Had my husband done something terrible? Did Jessica know? And did Bob manipulate her using that truth? Suddenly I understood that I was just another piece in a game that had been going on since long before me. 2 days passed where I didn't leave the house. I turned off the phone. I didn't want to see anyone. I just watched from the window, waiting for Bob to return. And he returned. One afternoon, while Leo was sleeping, he knocked on the door. "What do you want?" I asked him. "To talk," he said, calm. "I didn't come to hurt you." "Why now? Why me?" "Because you have what belongs to me." I showed him the envelope I had found. "This?" He looked at it with a mix of nostalgia and fury. "Yes, that's the last thing left of my life. My husband already paid for his mistakes. Not enough." He tried to step forward. I stepped back. I was scared, but also angry. And Jessica? What role did she play? She was useful. She needed money, and I needed someone inside the family. "Did you use her?" "Let's say we used each other, but she got ahead of herself. She thought she was smarter. I didn't think you would survive. That ruined everything." "And now?" I asked. "Are you planning to kill me?" He smiled. "No, you will do it for me." He left something on the table, a small bottle, identical to the one Jessica had used. And he left. That night I couldn't breathe. The bottle remained there on the table, like an invitation to hell. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it, while Bob's words resonated in my head. "You will do it for me." I didn't understand his meaning, until I remembered the insurance, the papers, the money. Bob didn't want to kill me directly. He wanted me to sign, to transfer everything left of Arthur's legacy. His revenge wasn't blood, it was power. But he made a mistake. He underestimated the woman who had already managed to survive her daughter-in-law, because while he thought he had control, I had already recorded every word of our conversation. The bottle, his threat, his confession, everything. And when he left, I called the police. Not as a victim, but as a witness. While I waited for them to arrive, I stood looking out the window. Bob was walking away slowly through the garden. The same dark figure, the same shadow from the past. And I felt something I didn't expect to feel. Pity. For him. For my husband. For me. Sometimes poison isn't in a jar. It's in the secrets we decide to keep for a lifetime. When you live long enough, you learn that the end never comes all at once. It arrives slowly, with soft steps, disguised as calm. That's how that morning arrived. The sunrise was gray, rain fell finely on the rose bushes in the garden, and the air smelled of earth and resignation. Bob had disappeared the night before, but he left more than a threat. He left the certainty that everything I believed for years, my marriage, my family, my security, was nothing more than a facade built on secrets. The clock struck 7 when there was a knock at the door. 2 officers, with neutral faces and routine gestures. One of them introduced himself. "Good morning, Mrs. Dominguez. We were informed you have evidence related to the Sterling case." I nodded in silence. I led them to the living room and showed them the recorder, Jessica's letter, the medical prescriptions, the phone recordings, everything. While they reviewed the evidence, their looks turned increasingly serious. One of them said to me, "This is enough to reopen the case of your daughter-in-law's death." "And Robert Sterling?" I asked. "If we find him too." I didn't answer. I knew they wouldn't find him. Men like him don't leave tracks, only scars. Hours passed. They took my statement, recorded my words, I signed documents. When they finished, they left me alone. The silence of the house was deafening. I went to the window. The garden was empty, but I could swear I saw a silhouette just for a second. Maybe it was the wind, or maybe it was the habit of expecting danger. I decided to sit in the dining room armchair, the same one where, months ago, I almost lost my life during my birthday. I looked at the table, now empty, and remembered every detail. The plates, the fake laughs, Jessica's gaze. I thought of her, not with hate, but with a sadness that hurt in my bones. A woman capable of so much evil isn't born that way. She is made, little, by force of resentment and loneliness. And I understood that deep down. Maybe we were more alike than I wanted to admit. My son David returned at dusk. He didn't look at me when he entered. His face was gaunt, his eyes swollen. He sat in front of me, in silence. For minutes, he didn't say a word. The tick-tock of the clock became unbearable. "Did the police come?" he asked finally. "Yes." "Did you tell them everything?" "Everything." He ran his hands over his face. "I don't know if I can forgive you." "Nor I myself," I replied quietly. He got up and walked to the window. The rain was falling harder. "I never imagined it would end like this." "No one imagines it," I told him. "Tragedies always seem impossible until they knock on our door." Then he turned with red eyes. "You know the worst part, Mom?" "What?" "Jessica told me once that she envied you." "Envy? Of what?" "Of your power over me. She said she loved you and hated you at the same time, that you always knew how to keep everything." I froze. It was true. For years, without meaning to, I was too strong a presence in his life. My son loved her, but part of him was always mine, and Jessica never stood for that. He sighed, exhausted. "I don't know if I believe everything that happened." "Believe me or not, son, but I'm alive, thanks to that." He looked at me in silence. Then he nodded and walked away. No hugs, no goodbyes. And for the first time, I understood that surviving doesn't always mean winning. Sometimes it means staying alone with the echo of what you lost. Days passed. The police confirmed that Robert Sterling had been seen for the last time at a bus station heading north. Since then, no one heard from him again. The case remained under investigation. I officially had no charges, but I didn't have peace either. Leo, my grandson, kept coming to see me every afternoon. With him, everything was different. His innocence was the only thing still keeping me standing. One afternoon, while making cookies together, he looked at me with his big eyes and said, "Grandma, There are no shadows in the garden anymore. Really? I asked him. Yes, I think they left. I smiled. Then, son, we can turn on the lights again. And we did. For the first time in months, the house shone again, not with the light of the past, but with a new one, softer, more human. That night, I sat at Arthur's desk. It still held his photos, his books, his scent. I took a blank sheet and started writing. A letter for my son, another for my grandson, and a final one, without a recipient. Internal monologue. Sometimes love hurts so much it turns into poison. Not because we want to do harm, but because we don't know any other way to defend ourselves. If you're reading this, it means the cycle has ended. Don't seek justice where there is no truth left. I did what I thought necessary, and although the price was high, I wouldn't change a single step, because today I can look at my reflection without looking down. I folded the letter and put it next to Arthur's envelope, the one from 1985. That night I slept for the first time without fear, but peace, like silence, never lasts too long. The next morning, the phone rang. The same old phone, the one that had recorded everything. I looked at the clock, 6 on the dot. For a second, I thought about not answering, but something inside forced me to do it. Hello? I said with a trembling voice. Silence. Then a breath. And a voice, soft, masculine. I told you this wasn't over, Audrey. My heart skipped a beat. Bob? No, dear, the voice responded. It's Arthur. I felt the phone slip from my hands. It couldn't be. My husband had died years ago, but the voice was his. Exact. Identical. What kind of joke is this? I managed to say. The voice laughed softly. It's no joke. I just wanted to say goodbye. You can rest now. Bob won't return. It's all over. The line cut. The dry sound of silence filled my ears. I stayed there, unable to move. My heart beat so hard I could barely breathe. I ran to the phone base. I pressed playback. The automatic recording turned on, but there was nothing. No registered call. No voice. Just static. I put my hand to my chest. A part of me knew it was impossible. The other didn't want explanations. Maybe it was a technical glitch. Or maybe, just maybe, the dead also know when to say goodbye. That afternoon, I went out to the garden. The sky was clear, the air warm. The flowers on the rose bushes were starting to open again. I sat on the stone bench and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel fear, nor rage, nor guilt. Only a deep sense of relief. I looked toward the horizon and whispered, You can rest now, Arthur. I will too. The wind blew, light, like a caress on the face, and I would swear that for an instant I felt his hand on mine. Then the world kept turning. The birds sang. Leo laughed inside the house, and the phone remained mute, because finally the story had ended. Not with justice, not with revenge, but with truth. And sometimes the truth, even if it hurts, is the only thing that can give a heart its rest. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for accompanying me in this story, for listening to every word, for sharing this journey with me. And before I say goodbye, I want to extend a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like if this story moved you. That way I'll know you're there, supporting and feeling along with me. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I'd love to know where you're joining me from on this path of memories, pain, and hope. I'm Audrey Dominguez, and this was my story.